Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Bill is off tonight. The family of 4 Waupaca County siblings killed by a wrong-way drunk driver nearly a year ago getting a small piece of closure tonight, with the man responsible being sentenced to more than 37 years behind bars. 48-year-old Scott Farmer and Nina pleaded no contest back in August and was found guilty of 5th offense drunk driving in 4 charges, a homicide by intoxicated use of a vehicle. In First Alert update, we have reaction from today's hearing from all sides.
State of Wisconsin versus Scott Charles Farmer.
In a standing room only Waupaca County courtroom, Scott Farmer went before a judge as the family of the 4 siblings he killed in a drunk driving crash as he drove the wrong way on Highway 10 last December spoke out asking for the maximum sentence.
His irresponsibility and lack of consideration for other people's lives destroyed 4 innocent beings and my life.
Speaking through an interpreter, that was Paulina Gonzalez, mother 26-year-old Daniel, 23-year-old Fabian, 14-year-old Lillian, and 9-year-old Daniela. 3 of the 4 died at the scene near Waupaca, and Daniel was left on life support before donating all of his organs. The one remaining sibling, Jorge, testified from Ecuador, which is where most of the family is from.
Destruir a alguien es una familia.
Destroying a family is a crime in itself. Personally, they destroyed my life was destroyed when I found out that my 4 siblings had died.
Farmer himself also addressed the court, saying he's sorry for what he did, although prosecutors say recorded phone calls between him and his wife from the jail repeatedly show no remorse and even blame the victims.
There's not a day that goes by that I don't think of this, and I wish I would have died instead of them. I have a ton of remorse for this.
The Gonzalez family receiving a ton of support both in the courtroom and in the community, with people writing the judge on their behalf.
No amount of time would be enough. I believe that the sentence that was handed down by the judge was just and fair and appropriate and will achieve the objective of making sure that Scott Farmer's not able to drive again and endanger anyone else.
We're just going to feel the emptiness and make the most of it because we have good people around us, our faith intact, and we'll continue to trust in God and have better days ahead little by little.
The Gonzalez family plans to return to Ecuador to spend Christmas with the remaining sibling. We also spoke with Farmer's wife Jamie after the sentencing. When asked about what happened in court, she told us, send them all back to Ecuador.